Alexis, you couldn't get that extra $26 million to make it a round number?
Giving me a really hard time here, Emily. Look, we're not complacent. It's been a good first year. This gives us something to push for here in year two.
So what are the target areas? Where do you see the biggest opportunities to deploy all that cash?
Well, look, early stage is still the bread and butter, but we're also seeing huge opportunities from companies right as they start breaking out in growth. Sector-wise, I've obviously been on the Web3 train for a little while now since seeding Coinbase all those years ago. But in the last 2 years, it has gone to another level. I've just seen too many really talented, really driven builders now moving into the space. And I think we're going to see some really interesting innovation to come from the next 5 years. And in particular in this space. So we're not focused entirely on Web3, still have space tech, climate tech, food tech, but the builders are certainly paving a way towards all things crypto these days, and that's going to keep us busy.
And, VCs are also pouring a lot of money into crypto. And I wonder, is all this money chasing the same startups? And could that lead to inflated valuations? I mean, FTX just raised at $32 billion, whether you consider that inflated or not. It's certainly a big number.
It is. And this is why I love being one of the first round investors. But it is also, I think it's true. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of dollars flowing in. But like everything in this point in the hype cycle, it's still most important to focus on and double down on the clear winners. What's undeniable here is that this technology has proven a utility. We're only seeing the sort of earliest days of that utility, of the value of ownership. And for those of us, I was lucky enough to be part of the generation of Web2 building a company like Reddit that proved and just showed a model for the world of read and write. And now what we're seeing, this whole Web3 jargon is really just about a third component, which is the ownership part. And we're just starting to see that with whether it's with gaming or NFTs or this infrastructure that now exists to let you benefit from a sense of ownership that has, I think, some tremendous implications down the line. And, we're just lucky to meet with great founders on day one and get to help them build that in. And I think you talked about some social media companies previously. I think it's going to be interesting to watch this transition because I think there's never been a better time to be a David among Goliaths, because the power of community and the organic sort of excitement that builds when you are part of something that feels much bigger than you, which is the nature of almost all these Web3 projects, is hard to deny.
So let's talk about this. Obviously, we're seeing massive after-hours market moves here. Facebook today down, times more than 25%. Snap up after hours more than 60%. What's happening here?
Well, I certainly think, I don't spend time on the public markets really, but it seems like people have finally taken into account what we've been seeing for 6-9 months now, which is all of the savviest marketers in the 776 portfolio have been moving their dollars away from Facebook and diversifying to other ad products, because the Facebook ad product, thanks to the Apple iOS changes, it just doesn't cut the mustard anymore. It is not executing and performing in a way that makes sense. So the smart marketers are moving lots of dollars away into other platforms. It does not surprise me that Snap is seeing some of the beneficiary or is a beneficiary of that. But I think it also calls into question a model that, a revenue model like advertising that never really felt great to most of the actual users, of the people who are actually creating the content. And I think this intersection of community and capital that is really embodied in what Web3 unlocks is going to be a really fun one to explore, because we're going to see new business models that are created where the actual creators of the content, whether it's someone taking a selfie or someone coming up with a clever post or what have you, have a stake in it. Their attention is more properly valued. And I think that's going to be a very big story over these next years. And I think what we'll find is that we weren't properly valuing attention. We weren't properly valuing community because the only crude tool we had was advertising. And that really doesn't do it justice.
Well, speaking of another community, Reddit's IPO is coming up, and I'm just curious what your reflections are on that as we approach that big milestone, and as you're seeing some of these big shifts. What's Reddit's role in that shift going to be?
Well, look, I obviously very, very publicly left the board last year. certainly wish the team there all the best. My focus these days is on 776. And I do think, there is going to be no shortage of big headlines in business press over this next year and for a while to come. We're seeing such a big shift in the role of the retail investor. And I know that, this is almost a 1-year anniversary from when I was on all these programs talking about Wall Street bets. I know there is still a lot of skepticism from folks out there. The reality is that there is a new generation. The digital native is thinking about their portfolio fundamentally differently than ever before. It's never, the 60-40 stock bond split is gone, right? It's not just, hey, I want to be able to trade stocks while, in the bathroom on my phone. It's also a diversification of alternative assets that ranges from everything from NFTs to trading cards. The dynamic here is so different now. And the retail investor, you saw a glimpse of the leverage they would have. I expect much more of it to come. And that means for CEOs, speaking broadly, there is a new responsibility now to not just think of yourself as a business leader, but also a community lead or almost a head of state. And it's something that I felt very unique explaining that scenario to people 15 years ago when Reddit was just starting out. But I really believe it's the model for new companies getting started now today. You have to be, especially if what you're managing has the kind of liquidity that, say, a token has. You have to be thinking consistently about your messaging, about what you're building. You have to be thinking about the community, the zeitgeist, just as much as you're thinking about the fundamentals of the business. And that's a responsibility not a lot of CEOs are going to be able to adapt to.
Well, speaking of NFTs, you recently gifted your wife, Serena Williams, a Bored Ape. Why are you so excited about NFTs and that in particular?
Look, my day job is venture investing, but every now and then I'm a bit of an NFT degen. I got in a year and a half ago or so, and I was excited by CryptoPunks simply because there seemed like there was a historical precedent there, and I bought my wife the Serena Punk that's now sort of become a meme. I think of these as art in a way, and as a sort of membership into a broader community. And that's not to say it's the only gift I give my wife. I still do traditional things, but I really do believe in the long-term value of community. And when I think about brand, right, and this is all on chain, right? This is all public. The secondary sales of something like Bored Apes is going to be in the tens of millions this year, right? So the money that they make just from you selling me an ape, the percentage, the royalty they make is meaningful money. And when we start to think about the power of brand, no one bats an eye when someone looks at the market cap of Nike. I don't know what it is right now, but that they're still getting a really generous revenue multiple. The business is in the business of brand, right? They sell atoms at the end of the day, but the value is the community and the culture. And there's been a precedent of brands that have built over decades from the bottom up using, clothing or what have you. This is a new medium. And it's the same nature of it, except it's so much more organic. It's so much more bottom up. Yes, it is weird. But that culture, internet culture, is the dominant culture going forward. And that's why I'm so excited to be so deep in the space, because it feels in many ways like early days Reddit, except it's not a sort of niche, fringe, early internet culture of 2005.
Interesting.
It's mainstream and it's global, and it has, I think, very big implications.